Go. All right, good morning, everyone. Today is March 18th. This is Zoology. I'm Mr. Sheridan. Hope everybody's having a great day. We're going to move into breeding gilts today, which are a little bit different than market hogs, very similarly to how we transitioned from market steers into breeding heifers and then market lambs into breeding ewes. We're doing the same thing here with changing from market hogs to breeding gilts. So we're going to start with some of our priorities, and these can move around a little bit. And again, just like with every species that we've talked about so far, these are subjective. So that if you have some issues that are significant, you can move these priorities up and down a little bit. It's not like we say, okay, if she's got a pin nipple, then we're not gonna have her win the class, even though she's by far the best one. Some of this stuff is you've got to weigh it up and down, but these are things in the order that we need to consider them as we are evaluating breeding gilts. So what do I mean by breeding soundness? Breeding soundness means that we have to be able to get this gilt bred. That is her purpose in life. We've talked a lot about that with market animals, that when we think about what actually is the purpose of these animals, why we start to, when we're evaluating them, that's what we need to look at. Well, these gilts need to get bred. So the two issues that we find with breeding soundness that are visual, that are physical, that we can see are underlines, meaning where their nipples are, that's where pigs are going to have, or piglets are going to have to be able to nurse from, and their vulvas, where they're going to actually have to get bred. So two things, we will see pigs, especially in these crossbred show pig varieties, we'll see some very, very, very small vulvas that could be determined to be, not sound, meaning that they would not be able to get bred. So we need to have our eye out for that. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen occasionally. And then we do need to evaluate underlines. We'll look for that a little bit under terms. I wrote underline. We want their underlines to be evenly spaced. We want their nipples to be prominent. A pin nipple would be something where that nipple isn't actually there, or we could have inverted nipples or super small. They would not be functional. Obviously, the purpose of these animals is so that they can nurse a large litter of pigs. So they got to be able to do that before we can even get started. Then we start talking about a lot of the same things that we have talked about throughout the market hog unit. We start talking about, and obviously we got to have structural correctness. These gilts are going to get big. If you've never seen mature hogs before, they're going to get somewhere between 300 and 400 pounds at least. They're carrying a lot of weight, and usually it's on concrete. These gilts have got to be sound. That's just, we've got to have them sound. We've got to have them in their pasterns so that they're not dragging dew claws on the ground. We've got to be able to do those sorts of things. Then we're talking about skeletal width, volume, capacity, a lot of the same things that we talked about with both ewes and heifers. We got to have a lot of those feminine qualities that we're looking for so that they can carry a litter. We're going to see a good example of that today. Then we're going to get into some design and balance issues. We want them to be level top, level hipped, have their structural correctness. Those things can be related, but we also want them to have a little bit of look. And then we get into muscle and fat. It's going to be much more difficult to evaluate one. The only thing where this might move up higher on your priority list is if you've got one that is heavily conditioned. If you've got a really fat gilt, then you can run into both breeding problems and problems, giving birth. So if we've got a real fat one, that can move up the priority list in a hurry. But if these gilts are relatively heavy muscled, if they're relatively good in their condition, those things move farther down the list. We're going to talk about EPDs. Our first class that we're going to do today has a scenario similar to the breeding ewe and breeding heifer classes that we did, where they're going to tell you what the purpose of these animals are. They give you a little paragraph about what their purpose is, which should determine how you're going to evaluate these things. A few things that you're going to see today. Number one, days to 250. Days to 250 pounds. This is what this indicates. meaning that how fast do those pigs go from being born to being at market ready weight. So we're trying to figure out, this would be very similar to yearling weight. We're trying to determine how quickly these pigs grow. Obviously, the fewer days that these pigs are on feed, the cheaper they are to raise for the same amount of profit. So we're talking about profit and loss statement. Days 250. Does this need to be high or low? Somebody said low. We want it to be low. Days of 250 needs to be low. In fact, we're going to indicate that here. We want lower the better. We want that with the number of days it takes them to get 250 pounds to be as low as possible. Loin eye area is an indication of muscle. How do we want that to be big or small? Big. Okay. So we want that to be big. Back fat. This is actually you'll see it as a scan number, so you'll see it as a decimal place. It'll say something like 0.67, 0.78, 0.89. Those are indications for how much fat they have, an actual measure of the fat that they have. That would be 0.78 inches of back fat. Do we want that to be high or low? Low. Back fat wants to be low. We want back fat down. And sow productivity index, very similar to some of the indexes that we talked about in both sheep and cattle. This is, they take a lot of different EPDs and they put them into one index. Do we want indexes to be high or low? We want it to be high. So what that does is it basically just spits out a number that combines a number of different things to give us one EPD that we can use. And there's a few different ones. We'll see tomorrow we'll see a TSI, a terminal sire index. This one obviously is related to maternal benefits and how good those sows are going to be. Tomorrow's the TSI is going to be related to boars out of that sow or out of that gilt, and related to boars and market hogs. We're looking for terminal sire index later. All right. Let's do our crash course in ear notches. This is how pigs are identified in commercial facilities, because ear tags don't really work with pigs. They're very curious and they have mouths that can actually get after them. They rip them out, or they get them caught on gates and that sort of thing. They get torn out, and once they do, it's very hard to identify them. So when they're very little, we call it processing pigs. When they're only a few days old, producers will grab a hold of pigs. They will clip their needle teeth. When pigs are born, they have very, very sharp little teeth, and they will actually cut their mother's underlines. So they actually go ahead and clip their needle teeth out, and they'll give them ear notches. Their ear notch depends on what litter they are on the farm. So that entire litter, however many pigs there are, typically there's somewhere between 6, 12. There can be, I've heard of litters that are 18 or 20. There's sometimes that are only 2 or 3. But whatever number litter that is. So say I'm a hog producer, I've got 60 sows. This is the 48th sow that has given birth. We're going to mark all those pigs with the number 48. In the pig's right ear is their litter. I always thought that it was backwards. You'd think that the litter number would go in the left ear. It's backwards. The litter number goes in the pig's right ear. So if you're standing behind them, it's that right ear. If you're looking straight at them, it's this one over here. The way that that's identified is we're doing a little math here, folks. So these combinations will give you any number that you want, up to, I think it's 200. It's a lot. So you can put up to 2 notches in each of these quadrants. We split the ear up this way. So if we're talking about litter number 4, we would put a notch here and a notch here, because that would add up to 4. Okay, if it's 5, then we'd put another notch down here in the 1 section. If it's litter 28, we're going to put 1 notch here in 27 and 1 notch down here in 1. So whatever you need to do to get to that particular number. And then the idea being that and this is a little bit subjective. Some of them are a little off. Sometimes they'll get torn ears and that sort of thing. So sometimes they're a little tricky to read. But This is the idea is you should be able to look at that ear notch and be able to add up the numbers between 1, 3, 9, 27, and 81. 81 is just clipping out the tip of their ear. So that's why that's up there. But usually it's only 1, 3, 9, and 27. And you're going to have 1 or 2 notches in each one of those quadrants. So might have to do a little math. We might work on that a little bit tomorrow. The left ear, the other ear, is the number pig that was born in that litter. So we said we got, litter number 48 over here. We did that over here. But then we've got to number those pigs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many there are. So if there's 23 pigs, we got 2 of these, and we get to the point where it gets a little excessive. You can use a 27 if you get over there, but you won't need to if, you shouldn't need to ever. So there's usually only 1, 3, and 9. This is a lot. I'm not expecting you to, know this. I'm not going to test you on this, but it is something that you should be exposed to. And a lot of times in reasons, they will refer to pigs by their ear notch number. So they'll call them pig 30-1 or something like that. So you got to be able to read these, but I know that a lot of you don't have that quite memorized, so it's no big deal. Okay, questions about breeding gilts, ear notches, anything like that? Okay, we're going to stop our recording and move on to our